Hello everybody, my name is Roan Folds, and I read the book by Robert B. Cialdini called Influence, The Power of Persuasion. Within this book, he goes over some of the 6 different ways that you are able to get your way with your audience, and how your audience is influenced in saying yes at most of the times to the certain requests that you're making to them. To begin, we'll start about fixed action patterns. A fixed action pattern is a decision that we'll make no matter what. For example, a turkey and her chick. If the turkey hears the chick making a tweet tweet noise, the turkey will care for them. Anything making that sound, including a stuffed lookalike, will also be cared for in a motherly way. Whereas if the chick doesn't make the tweet tweet noise, it has the possibility of being killed. This is a fixed action pattern that sometimes works on humans as well. Have you ever gotten asked by a friend to do a favor without a reason? You may not want to do this without a good reason, because people normally want a reason when they're doing something. They want to do it for a reason. They don't want to just do it to do it. So when people ask you to do something and they use the word because, that gives them a reason. And this is what people do. And this will most likely make them comply with what you asked, just because of that reason. Also, another thing I wanted to talk about was the contrast principle. This principle is the act of showing something inexpensive at first and then leading up to something more expensive. And so people see the more expensive item and say, oh, well, that looks so much greater. And they most likely will review their decision and go for something higher. For example, real estate workers will show people older houses first, and as they move up along, they will show the people the better houses that they were intending to sell them and show the comparison. They kind of just want people to see the worst situation or what they could buy and then convince them that this is better. And once they see that this is better, they will want that instead. Also, they use this at auto stores with add-ons. So when you buy a car and you're negotiating the price, you're typically wanting to get it for cheaper. When they do come to this cheaper option afterwards, they can also convince you to buy add-ons. And this is sort of their little trick at getting them back to the price that they wanted. Because in the book, they explained it as in there was this guy who went and was basically in the situation where he needed to buy a car and he had it all set up and they lowered it $400. And then the guy came and he's like, well, there won't be this, like air conditioning in your car, and we would have to bump it up $400 for an add-on, going right back to the price that they started with. But since he sees this as an additional thing that he has to pay for, he doesn't see this as the whole thing in general, and he still thinks he's getting a benefit in a way. Now on to rule 1, or tactic 1, if you so like. Reciprocation. Reciprocation is in everyday life. We feel indebted to people to reciprocate what they do for us. So in a sense, if someone does a favor for you, you're going to feel that indebtedness and require yourself, or almost want, to do a favor back for them. And in some cases, people who are seen as not reciprocating what others are doing for them are seen in a bad light. So they're seen as less attractive in a sense because they are not reciprocating the same that people are doing for them. I'm sort of in this situation right now with my manager, but I'm also a manager, so we're co-managers. But I keep covering for her and doing all these things for her, and she is constantly asking me to do a multitude of things, whereas she doesn't help me when I ask for things from her. And so in this sense, I'm not getting the just I deserve, in a sense, in the world perspective. But there's also another part to this, that even if they don't reciprocate it, people still will continually do stuff if people are asked. So say my manager keeps asking me to do stuff, most of the time I do still say yes, because I still want to help. But she is not doing as much for me as I'm doing for her. An example that he brought up in his book is people giving flowers for donations. So they're standing there, they ask for a donation and give the flower. Most of the time, people see this flower and it's something they're receiving, so they feel like they have to give something back. Whether this is a few cents, a few dollars, however much, but this flower is only for that purpose. Most of the time, that flower ends up in the garbage. Yes, the garbage. In the book, he describes how one of the people at the station handing out the flowers for donations is actually going around on the retrieval route to all the trash cans in the area and picking the flowers that they had just given to someone out of the trash can and reusing them for more donations. This is crazy, right? People are literally saying yes to people and giving them something when they're not even going to keep the product that they got or the gift that they received. People feel indebtedness when they have a favor that they haven't returned. Because of this indebtedness, some people return with larger favors than the ones that they have received. A tactic that I know that I've used in the past is called reciprocal concession. So this principle or tactic would be asking for a large, like a really important favor or something that you know they're going to say no to, like it's so out of reach that they wouldn't even be able to do it, and then following it up with another request, but a smaller request. But that was their actual request in the first place. But they knew that by saying no to the first one, the larger one, they had a higher chance of saying yes to the smaller but still higher request that they're asking. As we talked about before with the real estate workers, in showing houses up, we know that it's easier to sell down. Once you show them something higher and it's so expensive, once you show them the median, that's going to be something they're going to want. How to say no. So, if you're offered a flower and you really don't have any money at all and you know you're being manipulated into giving something or taking something, just realize when this trick is being played on you and say no. There's always going to be people out there trying to get things from you and using your mind to manipulate you. And because of this, you really have to realize when this is happening in order to say no. Commitment and consistency, rule number 2. So, commitment and consistency, it's pretty spelled out there for you. But after making a decision, people normally want to stay consistent with that decision that they made in future reference. So, say you made a certain decision about doing something and you made that life choice. In the future, you may look back on that and keep it consistent with your present life. Humans have good personal consistency. Something called automatic consistency is when we make up our minds on a subject and it's just made up right away, automatically. And this isn't to be confused with stubborn consistency, because stubborn consistency is when we avoid thinking, and it allows us to avoid thinking because we made our minds up and we don't want to again. Something that he mentioned in this chapter was about telemarketers trying to sell you stuff over the phone. In some studies, they saw that asking the first question being, "Hi, how are you?" and waiting for a response was the most significant and got the most responses and sold the most product. because they waited and listened to their response on the phone, their customer really appreciates that without even knowing it. And because of this, it goes back to the reciprocity rule in saying that since they asked how their day was, that they're going to be more intrigued in buying their product without even knowing it, in a sense. And this goes with automatic consistency, where once you make up your mind in the way that you respond to that person and how you feel that they really tried to make an effort to say hi to you, this will make you want to buy their product. Another example of store advertisement would be stores advertising for toys like around Christmas time, and the kids seeing a toy online and asking their dad, Dad, I need this toy. And the dad responds, yes, I promise you, I'll get you this toy for Christmas. As the dad goes to the toy store, he realizes that this very popular new toy is out of stock. Wow, who figured? Well, this dad had to buy a bunch of different smaller toys to make up for not getting him and his son the toy that he wanted. The commitment he had made to his son made him need to buy all these other toys to make up for what he wasn't able to give to him. And then, since he made that commitment, once that toy's back in stock, he went back to the store and bought it. So yes, he bought all those other toys and this toy after Christmas. Wow, this store got it good. How to say no with commitment and consistency. So, the next time you find yourself in this situation, ask yourself, do I want to commit? Do I need to commit? Would I be able to produce what they want if I commit to this agreement? And then if you don't think you can, definitely say no. Don't make promises that you won't be able to keep. Social proof, rule number 3. This chapter goes over social instances and how other people influence how we act. The way this works is that when we don't know how to do something, we look to others. Sheep's following the herd, most definitely. We view a behavior as more correct in a given situation to the degree that we see others performing it. When we are uncertain, we look to others, as I had previously said. The more that people do it, and the more that we see people doing it, the more that we're going to think it's okay. And kids, this especially relates to them because kids learn more from their peers and other children than they do from their parents. He explains a story of this kid who really loved swimming, but he wouldn't want to go in without his floaties. Like, he needed his floaties to be able to go in. And the parents were really trying to encourage him to go in without his floaties and do it by himself. This took months and months of convincing, and he still wouldn't give in, until one day they invited his friend over for a playdate. And he came in and they hopped in the pool, and he watched his friend hop in the pool without his floaties, and he came to the conclusion that since his friend is 3 and he's 3, that he should be able to swim in the pool without his floaties as well. And so he did. Simple as that. The parents were confused, and they concluded that they should have invited his friend over a lot sooner to help him learn to swim without his floaties. Another example of this would be bartenders. Bartenders or coffee makers often put a little bit of tips in their tip jar to encourage other people to do the same thing. If a customer already sees tips in there, they'll think that that's the right thing to do. They'll want to do it as well. Another example of sheep following the herd would be the example of mass suicide. So he explained this story that I'm not completely familiar with, but It's a story about these people who were following this leader of sorts and convinced them to all commit mass suicide. In the beginning, there's going to be some people who are followers and they're brainwashed and they don't know any better, they're just following him. And so they drank the poison first and they laid down and died. The rest followed them because they believed it was the right thing to do because someone already had done it. But they were so brainwashed in the first place that they didn't even realize what they were doing was a mass suicide. Yeah. And another situation would be, have you ever noticed someone in trouble but no one's going to help them? This is called the pluralistic ignorance effect, where a group of strangers, and there's one stranger that's hurt or in a bad situation, and no one at all is coming to their aid. They could be dying on the floor and no one's helping them because they wouldn't know any better. I guess that's kind of a dramatic excuse. It's kind of more like if someone was like leaning against a tree and really having a hard time breathing and needed to go to the hospital and no one really saw them. Well, in that situation, that person would want to get at least one person from the crowd of strangers that isn't noticing anything and try to get them to do something for you. Once other people see that one person coming to your aid, they're going to all come to your aid. Everybody. There's going to be people calling the cops, multiple calls, and people just coming to help you and seeing what's wrong. Right after that one person comes, it's going to be sheep following the herd, and everyone's going to come to try to help you. How to say no to social proof? Well, first you have to recognize when social proof is fake. When people could be providing you with information just so everyone will follow. Chapter 4, Rule 4. What causes liking? What is it? When someone's attractive, they could be acted towards in a different way. This is called a halo effect. When someone's treated differently because of the way they look, whether it's they're called on first for something or something completely different, could be taken in a negative way as well. An example of this would be when one kid acts in a negative way towards you or someone else, and another really cute kid, when they see this kid acting in a negative way towards someone, but they don't treat it the right way because they're a cute kid, even though they should be treated with discipline if they're doing something negative. The second part of this would be similarity. We as humans, when we meet friends, we tend to go with people that have the same interests and things like that. So when business people are trying to bond with you and try to sell their product, they're going to try to look for things that they're similar to you with. And because of this, humans just tend to stick with people that are similar to them, and they really bond with people when they have similar ideals. Number 3 would be compliments. Compliments are given and received, and most of the time, compliments are nice. People are commenting and saying, hey, I like your dress. I like your outfit. And then they say it back. In business deals, this could be the same. You can compliment someone and they'll probably end up liking you more. The fourth would be contact and cooperation. This goes along the lines of someone meeting someone, doing a business with someone, and they find that they have someone in contact, they know someone else that they are mutual friends with, and this will increase the liking of each other for sure. If they have a mutual contact, a mutual friend, or even if they were contacted or were friends before anything even happened, before this business deal. Number 5 is association and conditioning. This means that people might like each other just because they're involved in the same things, or they might not like them because they're involved in things that they don't agree with. Some examples of this could be people already just liking each other because they're on the same sports team, or when you're going to a sports game, you see someone else wearing the same jersey as you and you're like, hey, nice jersey, like you already like that guy. like he likes the same team as you. Or this could be seen as if someone's really Republican or Democratic and you're the other, they might not want to associate with that because their opinions are so strong. How to say no. So for this one, I have an example. Say you go out and buy a car and the salesperson is awesome. Like he's like the coolest person you met ever. And he's just really coming off to you as this super nice and genuine guy. And you go and drive the car with him. And you just really got to think about, are you buying the car or are the sales guy is not coming with this car. You're just buying the car. He's not coming with you. So don't let him and the idea of him convince you to buy something that you shouldn't. Just make sure that you're getting what you want and you're not being convinced to get it just because you like the person and the way they're treating you and things like that. Just really make sure you don't have to be mean to them and be mean in a negative way at all. You can be nice and you already like this guy, but you just have to make sure that you know what you're getting and you know what you want, and don't be fooled. Number 5, authority. When you're talking to your professor or a teacher or someone above you in a way, you might talk to them different. Personally, I'd talk to them different than I would my friends, my best friend, for example. So this does have an impact because when you see someone with a doctor or professor, you're going to react in a different way just by knowing their social status or their level of intelligence almost. And in this sense, you might feel obligated to talk to them in a different manner. Although they might learn a lot more by just having a normal conversation with another human, another life, than they would if you're just talking to them as an authority figure. So you just have to keep in mind that when you're talking to someone, they're a human too. It's not anything to do with their status and how much school they've had or how much money they have. You really just have to think about how we're all humans, and this really can be detrimental when someone's holding authority over you because you may feel the need to comply to almost everything they're telling you. And another example for authority would be clothing. So if you see someone wearing really nice clothes, you might feel obligated to treat them differently than someone wearing different clothes or less dressed up as everybody else. How to say no. Just talk to them. Just be normal with everybody. Just be yourself and be true to yourself and be nice. You don't have to act different to someone if you just meet them in a certain location and it's just a random stranger. You don't know anything about this person. Once you hear that they're a doctor or something like that, you don't have to change the way you were acting with that person. Also, we have to think about how truthful our experts are. You have to ask when you're trying to say no to yourself, how truthful is this expert in the first place? What exactly do they hold over me and how much? Because it's really not that important. Chapter 6, scarcity. So the scarcity principle states that when objects or opportunities that have a limited availability or limited items seem more valuable to us just because of the fact that there's not as many of them. Does scarcity equal better? Just because something is original or hard to get, does that mean it's better than other things that are easier to get? No. Do you need a designer something, or would you rather just get something that's the same object that might cost less just because of the label? Because of this, some businessmen use tactics such as called the limited number tactic, which means that they basically just say that they don't have a lot of the item and they're trying to get you to buy it before that item's gone because there's not as many of them. Freedom, once granted, won't be taken without a fight. Here's a few examples. 1, parents and their kids in relationships. When your child begins to date, you're going to want to know what they're doing, where they are, and make sure they're safe. But you also have to give them a certain amount of freedom as well. But when the parents intrude on this freedom, they're going to have a little kickback with their kids. And this is because they feel that they're being intruded on their freedoms. Parents really need to be strict and consistent with the rules and disciplines with their children, because once they set an amount of freedom for their child, this child is going to want to continually have this freedom. But if you keep going back and forth, this will make your child emotionally tell you that this is not okay. And the reason you'd be seeing this is because you're not staying consistent, and they're going to take the scarcity of their freedom and really want that all the time. They're going to want it more than normal. How to say no. So the next time that you see something or an opportunity that's scarce, make sure you think about if the item is actually valuable to you. Do you want this item? What is it? Why is it so scarce? And what could basically replace it instead? Also, do you have an item already that's the same thing? Just make sure you know whether the item that you're going to buy is useful or not. Overall, Robert B. Cialdini's book, The Influence in the Power of Persuasion, really showed me the tactics that people use in business in situations to really take control of people's minds and convince them to buy or compel them to donate or just get their way in a bunch of different situations through these useful mind tactics. And within the book, he really describes them in a cool way where he talks about how they're kind of like jujitsu. Like jujitsu is like fighting and you tackle and stuff like that, and you have strategic moves all around. But in this wording jujitsu, this is really like the best strategies that you can use on others and make sure that you know them so that they're not being used on you. Because I definitely broke through and realized that so many of these rules and these tactics and just jujitsu is really being used on everybody every day. Wherever you are, whatever you see, ads on Instagram, everything, they're mind controlling craziness that really works on interesting people in everything that's going on. The power and the weapons of power and influence that this book is surrounded by are very strong, and they have studied the mind and the way that people make decisions, which is the next book that I'll be talking about is a book about how people make decisions and how decisions are based off memory. And we're remembering everything that's happening to us every day, whether or not it's in gist memory or verbatim, which I'll talk about in my next video. But we're remembering. And when we remember something, it's going to have an effect on us. And everything that we do is controlled by ourselves, our memory, and what's happened to us in general. So we have to realize when we are being used and when we're not. And thank you so much for listening.